That's the pre-work. And then we're going to assume that everybody in here, for the sake of the exercise, has already gotten to the point where they have a pretty solid idea of why they're doing what they're doing, and now we're ready to do some concrete goal setting. Okay, so what is a goal? Simply put, it's to increase or decrease blank by doing blank. Okay, very simple. How many people actually wrote it that way when they wrote down a goal?
Halfway.
Yeah, close? Okay, nice. Yeah, more or less. Okay, so some examples. So, for example, increase the number of subscribers to my newsletter to 10,000 by January 2015 by writing more articles and promoting my list. Decrease my weight to 125 pounds by December 27, 2013 by eating very clean, non-processed foods. Obviously, these are very old examples. I wonder, we could ask them if it actually worked. So here are some general categories about why goals fall apart. They're poorly defined, so you're not specific, and we're going to talk about being specific. You don't plan ahead, so planning takes on different forms. What does planning actually mean? We're going to talk about that. Vision and mapping, so specificity can be aided by things like mind mapping, which I'm not sure if we get into that too much, but having a vision, understanding, is part of the why. Lack of accountability, so accountability meaning that somebody else in your life is making sure that you actually do the thing that you're going to do, whether that's a friend or a coworker or a coach. That's a huge part of coaching. That's part of what you're paying for if you get a coach. It's to make sure that you do the thing you say you're going to do. And lack of intrinsic motivation or inherent desire to meet the goal. So intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, and we're going to talk about that as well. Lack of willpower. So in other words, the sense that you have this agency, this ability that I can really do this. And that's also self-efficacy. We're going to talk about that. Primers and visual cues. Things that are going to help you remind yourself that you actually need this in your life. For example, I had a foam roller. I kind of hurt my back, and I went to the gym and hit the gym, and I was sore. And I have this foam roller, but it's in a corner, and I never use it. And I'm like, I'm going to use that foam roller because it's really important to me. But it wasn't in my face. I had no primer. And at one point, I used it, and I left it out in the living room. And then the next day, I was like, oh, okay, foam roller. And I just used it. So it was primed for me to use. And failure to plan to fail. So it's not just planning for what are the steps for the goal to succeed. It's also what's going to happen if things go wrong. You have to plan for that. We'll talk about that too. So has anybody heard of SMART goals before? Yeah? SMART goal? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So it's pretty common, right? It's been around for a really long time. Companies use them a lot. And it's a great framework. We're going to take SMART goals to the next level using some research. But what are SMART goals? Just to review. So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So can somebody read these for me? Volunteer? You.
Specific, well-defined, clear to everyone. Measurable, concretely know when the goal is achieved or how far away from completion it is. Attainable by the goal setter or stakeholders. Perception is high. Realistic, within reach and attainable given skill, resources, and time. Timely, enough time to achieve the goal without hindering performance.
Okay. Any questions about that as of right now? One I get a lot is the difference between attainable and realistic. Is that clear? Or, we can talk more about that as well. Basically, attainable versus realistic. Attainable is that willpower, that sense that this makes sense. It's you can also flip these. You can call it whatever you want, as long as you are clear that one is about that perception and the other one is about the skills, the resources, the kind of nitty-gritty stuff. And timely, you want to make sure that you have a specific time. So here is a nice little simple sheet that you can use. This is on my website, groupcoaching.com. If you want to download it for free, it's there. So, but it helps you write things out. It's very important to put things down on paper, and on paper. So print this out and do it with a pen and no distractions. And you go through each step. So there's the step, and then there's the action associated with the step. And you put in the dates, the metric you're using to measure something. And if you don't have a metric because it's not a quantitative thing, it's more of a qualitative thing, then you can come up with your own metric. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how do I feel about this particular situation? Like my goal is like related to, I don't know, let's say emotional stability. Okay, how am I going to measure that? Sure, you have like assessments and stuff like that, but you're not going to do that. It's like, okay, okay, right now I'm at a 2, off the wall, whatever it is. And my goal is to get to a 7, you know? So it's kind of a self-assessed, imperfect thing, but it is a measurement, and it's something that you can come back to consistently and keep track of. And, you know, so if you have, let's say you're at a 2, and then, you know, how is it going to work over time? When are you going to get to the 7? So step 5 is maybe 7 or 10 or whatever it is. And then celebrate. So making sure that you are rewarding yourself each step of the way. And that doesn't mean if you do a small thing, you go on vacation, you know, because then you don't actually get to, you know, live your life. But you can, you know, have a piece of chocolate, or, you know, just acknowledge to yourself. Give yourself, you know, a pat on the back, truly. Which is very important, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So SMART plus goals, that's a very small plus, but there's a plus there. So SMART plus goals is this concept basically from positive psychology. A lot of this research comes from positive psychology. And the idea is taking SMART goals to the next level and understanding why they work and what makes them work even better. So here are the categories. Being specific, making sure the goals are challenging, making sure they're approach goals, that you have primers, that you have high level of commitment, that you make implementation intentions, so planning for how it's going to work, that you build in accountability, and rewards and celebrations. Implementation intentions will also include the planning for pitfalls. So specific. So will someone read this for me? And I'll call on you if you don't volunteer. Okay. Okay.
A specific goal answers the what, why, and how of the goal. What will be, what will be done, why it needs to be accomplished, how it will be executed by when. Example, vague goal, increase sales. Specific goal, increase sales by 15% by the end of the quarter by placing 300 customer calls.
Right. Questions about that? Difference between vague and specific goal. So how many of you wrote down a vague goal at the beginning? Common, right? Okay. I do it all the time. Everybody does all the time. Like, oh, it'd be great to do this, right? And the more you practice, the more every time you have a goal, you hear yourself go, oh, that was a vague goal. Wait a second. Okay, I'm gonna. Yeah. Appropriately challenging goals. So we don't want to stretch ourselves too far, right? There's a limit to how far we can go. If I'm like, oh, I'm going to be an NBA superstar, probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen. Maybe it is going to happen. What's that?
That was one of my hopes when I was 15, actually.
I mean, you know, for some people, you look like you're taller than I am. I mean, so,
There's still time.
I mean, yeah, there are things that are realistic, attainable, right? But we do want to stretch ourselves. Goals should be challenging. They want to stretch you. You want to feel like this goal is difficult. It's a hard goal. And there are reasons why people don't make challenging goals. And that has to do with self-esteem and self-efficacy, more importantly, which is what we really need to focus on. Because, you know, people do these kind of do your best goals. They're sort of the vague goals. You know, I'm gonna try to do this. Generally sound like I'm gonna try to hit the gym. Yes.
So what if you're like the opposite? So I'll do very challenging goals.
Yeah.
To the point where I feel like, oh my God, if I keep going, I'm gonna burn out.
Yes. Good point. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's one of the implementation intentions in this kind of thing. So when you have do my best or do your best goals, DYB, they've done a lot of research about this, and basically they can decrease self-esteem and self-efficacy because you don't believe that you can actually achieve a goal. So if you've been setting resolutions and not meeting them for many years, what happens?
The speed goes down.
Yeah, the value of setting goals goes down.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you stop believing that you're capable of actually achieving the goal. And this also happens when you're tying the outcome to your identity, to who you are, as opposed to the process of going through the goal. So if you've been doing this for many years, like most adults have, when you look at a goal and it's challenging, you're like, I'm never going to get that done, especially if it's vague. When you get really specific, and even if it's a very challenging goal, when you get really specific and you can break it down into actions, then it becomes imminently available to you, right? If you're being realistic and you're doing all of those things. Whereas when you set high goals and achieve them, you build self-efficacy, right? Even if you are, and especially if you're rewarding yourself along the way, you're tracking progress, you're seeing how each time you take another step, it is a benefit to you, and you go, oh, I can do this. I did it before, I'm doing it again, next time I can do it also. So you build that self-efficacy. It creates a lot of vulnerability. When you put a high goal, like a hard goal out there into the world, it's kind of scary, right? Have you guys ever felt that? Any examples? I can see it in your eyes. Yeah.
I know for myself, if I do my first thinking of a resume challenge, I want to put it out there. It was like, for me, putting something out there that I had never done before, so it was a very high goal for me, and I felt completely vulnerable because I was like, what if no one attends? What if no one signs in or opts into it? No one joins my Facebook group, like all this stuff. So absolutely that vulnerability of like, you start feeling, what ifs?
Absolutely. Who else?
I work with a not-for-profit outside of my day job, and it's all volunteer run, and we're constantly like, we're going to do a dozen events in the next 3 months, and everyone's like, yeah, because they're all all volunteering their time, and we end up going for it, and then the 2 weeks before, we're like, oh shit, why did I do this to ourselves? And we keep, it's sort of a constant, it's a pattern, and within the group that high level, the goal is to try and actually mitigate that, but we gotta get more specific about how we do that.
Right. Mitigate that, what does that mean, right?
Exactly. I'm not
right?
sure yet.
Yeah, so putting yourself out there in that way, especially publicly, accountability, that's another thing. So it's tied to accountability. It makes you feel like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? But that can be a good thing. If you can actually do it, like Crystal was saying, that you have to just put out the prototype. You just have to try, because it's about the process. It's about trying things out, seeing how it goes, gathering data, and making changes, right? And as you do that, you build the belief that you're capable of doing it. So it kind of fuels itself. It's like this upward spiral that happens. So there's an example here of a study, the subjective experiences in goal difficulty in 2005. Weiss and Freund found that those who set high goals did not experience burnout or a decrease in feeling alert, active, or attentive. They concluded that although high goals require more energy and effort to pursue, the subjective benefits largely outweigh the costs. So if you find yourself getting burnt out a lot, first of all, you're not in the majority, right? Because there's something going on there, right? And it's worth paying attention to. Having high goals that you're engaged with in the proper way give you energy. The fear that they're going to take energy away is mostly a myth, if you're doing it properly, right? And that's the trick, right? So how do you look for a high goal that isn't going to sap all of your energy? It might not be the right goal, or it might not be used in the right way if it's taking energy away from you. But usually you feel energized by goals. You should. That's a measurement, that's a metric, right? Okay, so in summary, DIY goals, the ones we're talking about, increase self-efficacy, and DYB, do your best, decreases self-efficacy. So approach versus avoidance goals. So your brain, okay, so let me explain this. When you think of a donut, when you say, I'm going to try to not eat donuts today, what does your brain think about? Donuts, right? If you think about, yeah, because now we're thinking about, yeah. Exactly, because you can't think not donuts, not donuts. It doesn't work, right? You have to replace it with something else, right? And it's the same thing with business and, and exercise goals. I'm going to be not overweight. I'm going to be, whatever it is. I'm going to avoid temptations at the party to eat the donut, whatever it is. Or I'm going to not be in this job that I don't like anymore. That's a really common one. I don't want to be in this job. Okay. So all you're thinking about is, all you're thinking about is, oh, this job sucks. Yeah, this job sucks. But you're not finding a solution. So you want to find approach goals. So you always have to test in your goal if it's an approach goal. Can I just ask if anybody wrote any avoidance goals? And no judgment. It's a process, right? Any? No? We have approach goals here? Excellent. But always test them. And it's something that I've done all the time. This avoidance goal. Oh, I'm so sick of this, I'm sick of that. It's like complaining, but it's not a solution. So it's the way you frame it. It's the same thing, but flipped into the positive, into the affirmative. So what does that show? What does that goal show that you do want? How do you state it in the positive? And what is the positive opposite of the thing that you're complaining about, essentially? Okay, so primers. Conscious or unconscious cues that are paired together and create a behavioral change. So let's think of some examples of primers. Does everybody do you guys understand basically what a primer is? Yeah? Any examples of primers? Anything that you've used? Yes?
Post-it note on the fridge.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, what else?
An Excel spreadsheet.
Wow.
So I
Part of it
yeah.
that keeps it going is checking it off or like highlighting it.
Okay.
If you don't, it's just too much.
Right. So
I feel like the motion of checking stuff off is what
the emotion, I think, is the primer, right? So it's a reward, yeah. So it's a kind of an unconscious primer, right, essentially. But what we're trying to do is put the goal at the top of mind, essentially, right? This is important to me, and I'm going to remind myself of that in one way or another. It could be a scent. I know that there are like experiments about primers. I think there was one that was people walked into a room, and they were given a crumbly cookie. And those who had the scent in the room of like a citrus smell, like a nice clean smell, were more likely to clean up after themselves than the people who had the crumbly cookie and no smell at all. Right, so it's this unconscious primer. So it doesn't have to be the Post-it note. It can be, and those are very useful. Like me with the foam roller in my living room, it's like, okay, this is right here. But it can be like the placement of things, the way that, I don't know. It could be spiritual. So here's a few examples. The Post-its, passwords, I think is really clever. Like an email password or whatever, every time you log into your computer, if it's a password that somehow reminds you of your goal, even if it's subtle, but it's going to remind you that you're avoiding it, right? Like, even if it's for an instant. A particular ringtone, so like a sound that is associated with something. So you can get really creative with these things. Okay, commitment and goal achievement. So according to goal expert Locke, who wrote about this in 2002, 2 factors affect goal commitment: the importance of the goal, so its value, and the belief that you can make progress toward it, self-efficacy. We've talked a little bit about that already. So how do you increase the value of the goal? What do you guys think? Well, here are the answers. So you have to ask yourself the right questions. And part of that is pre-work to the goal, right? So if you're already setting the goal and already doing the actions associated with it, but you don't know why it's important to you, you might find that you're questioning why you're doing the goal. You're like, wait a second, you feel disconnected from it. It's not really giving you energy. It's hard to stay focused. You have these little signs here and there. So ask yourself these big questions. Why is this important to me? That's a really good question for like everything in life, basically. Why is this important to me? What does this mean to me? What is it doing for me? What impact is it having on my life? So it increases the value of the goal. You see it as something necessary. Brendan Burchard talks about the high performance habits, one of them being necessity, so you increase necessity of the goal. So this has to get done because why? Why does this have to get done, and why does it have to get done today? Why do I need to do this? And if there isn't enough necessity, you can build it in, you can explain it. And if there's no reason, there's no necessity, then what is the likelihood of that goal actually getting done? Right? Okay, I have to go quicker. All right, let's go fast. Accountability, we sort of touched on that a little bit, but you need to be answerable to your own goals, right? Somebody. This one's really important. When situation X arises, I will perform response Y. So you plan for situations. It's not just the steps associated with, it's like, what could happen? What could happen? What are the obstacles that I'm going to encounter? How can I deal with them? Because when they do come up, or something that sort of resembles it, you're going to give yourself a reward in one way or another. Your brain's just going to give you some dopamine because you have predicted it, right? You're like, oh, okay, yeah, I knew this was going to happen. Here it is. I know how to handle it. Or if it goes badly, it's not like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Or you're in denial about the donut, for example. You're like, oh, okay, I ate the donut, but I knew that at some point I was probably going to have a temptation. This is it. Here's how I'm going to handle it. I'm going to, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. Self-compassion. And I'm going to go to the gym or whatever it is. I'm going to eat vegetables. Approach goal. Eat vegetables, not eat the donut next time, right? Okay. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Thanks. Okay, so I have here these. If you could please pass these around. Here you go. So this worksheet and the other one is just my info on the back. Enough? Yes. So this is the Smart Plus Goals worksheet that we've been talking about. And it gives you a key that explains at the bottom what each one of these things are, and a little bit of space. Obviously, you can build out each one of these sections into like as many pieces of paper as you want. You can do mind mapping, which is a whole concept. If you've never heard of it, Google it. Mind mapping, very good. And get really specific and build out your goals in a specific way. So you understand what's important to you, who's going to be accountable, what are the pitfalls that could happen, what are the specific action steps, how are you going to measure your progress, and why it's important to you, and exactly by when. If you find that your goal is more than a month out, you could probably have a shorter goal, one that's going to fit within a month. There's nothing wrong with having long-term goals and planning and having a vision, but in terms of like getting stuff done and making sure it's attainable, it's difficult to measure something that's a year out, it's difficult. So break it down, and sometimes an action step, you go, oh, wait a second, this action step is probably one of the goals itself. Sometimes if you're like really resistant to a goal, like let's say going to the gym, which is always the best one, you can have action steps like put socks on. Action number 1, put on socks. Action number 2, walk to the door. Action number 3, put on my shoes. And or little primers like that where you leave your water bottle or your towel somewhere. And these little things to trick your brain into going, all right, I'm going to do this. And if your brain really doesn't want to do it, and you can say to yourself, well, I'm not going to do that. But if I was going to do that, what would I do first? It's a nice little trick. I'm not going to do it, but if I was going to do it, what would I do first? And I promise you, the more times you do this, it becomes easy. Right now, it's like, oh, I'm throwing all this stuff at you. It's, drinking from a fire hose. But it's practice. You do it 1,000,000 times, and it's just going to be, and I'm not an expert at it by any means. I mean, I struggle with this stuff all the time. But I find like my brain going, oh, I remember that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I remember pitfalls. You start thinking about it. So, okay, and so basically that's it for me. This is a little bit of information of what I have going on. So please join my meetup. It's called Professionals in Career Transition. Meetup is in meetup.com. You can look it up. This is the URL isn't on there. It's on my website. There's a link, but if you just go to Meetup and do Professionals in Career Transition, you'll find it. For the next 16 sessions, I'm doing $5 sessions for a program that normally costs thousands of dollars. So the reason I'm doing that is because I'm running kind of a pilot, and afterwards I'm going to take it to companies and say, please give me lots and lots of money for this. So it's an opportunity to get some high-level resilience training that kind of resembles this, but a lot of different topics, and for $5 a session. And if you are here and you remind me about this, I will give you that discount, $50 off if you sign up for 3 months of coaching, $100 for 6 months, and there's like some various free things on my website if you go to groupcoaching.com. That's it, thank you. Do we have time for questions, or we're pretty much out of time?
Sorry.
Yeah? Okay, you sure? I don't want to, does anybody have to run? I don't want to keep you if you have to run right now. No. Any questions? Yeah?
What's the difference between a resolution and a goal?
Having said all of this, what do you think it is?
I mean, I'm still torn between what I had in my mind before, and I'd love to hear what your kind of specific definition would be, if there is one.
So it doesn't matter what the wording is as long as it makes sense to you, right? I don't know what the dictionary says. I don't care. The difference is vague goals versus, call it whatever you want, smart plus, specific, that hit all of those things. So when I think of a resolution, look, if you're like really resolved, like that's a powerful word. Maybe that word is important to you and you're like, I resolve, and that's like gonna take you all the way. Great. But most people, right? Most people, when they talk about resolutions, New Year's resolutions or whatever resolutions, they're vague. They're like, it would be nice to, it doesn't really go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? So to me, that's the definition. Does that resonate? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. Questions?
Oh, yes. So you talked about, which step was this, accountability.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think having a third party keep you accountable, not only someone you know, but someone at an event like this would make your goals more realistic?
100%. Absolutely. And I would even recommend, if anybody wants to be an accountability partner, or you want to have several accountability partners, you can ask for permission. Obviously, the other person has to really be invested, care, not invested financially or anything, but they have to care. They have to actually follow up. Because if they say, okay, I'm going to email you in a week to make sure you did that, and they don't, then, well, I mean, even the prospect could help, right? But you want to make sure, right? And so if you're going to volunteer as an accountability partner, make sure like you're going to do it for real, right? And obviously, if you have a coach and you're like paying them money to do it, they better do it, right? But you don't need to, spend money on this kind of thing. Could be your friend, or could be a stranger, could be somebody that is trustworthy in that way. Definitely.
I have another question, and this is something that I seem to struggle myself with sometimes, is and it touches on what all the speakers spoke about this evening, the challenge between setting goals and having these steps in your goals, and actually just getting started. Sometimes I get too caught up in making sure that I've got all the ducks in a row, and now I know that these are my majors, this is what I need to achieve, this and this I need to achieve that. And other times, as you mentioned, just get going, and it's going to evolve as you get going. So how do you work on finding that balance?
That's a really good question, and it's a big answer, and I feel like I probably don't have time to answer all of it, but goal setting and goal meeting is one piece of the pie, and having the right mindset and asking all of the right questions, there's a lot that goes into if you really know why you're going to do the goal, and you're really clear about it, and the action steps are very realistic and attainable and all of these things, and you have low friction, then it's going to be easier for you to approach them. If your initial step is make a website, you're not going to do it. Your initial step has to be turn on the computer. You know what I'm saying? So there's like the emotional part of your brain, that emotional core of your brain, that is the kind of paleo, mammalian, caveman, lizard, whatever brain, that is afraid of everything, it just wants to survive. And you have to speak to it like with care. You have to say, I understand you, You can't speak to it with logic, and like action steps. You have to go, it's okay, I get it, let's make it easy for you, kind of thing. And then once that part of your brain comes along for the ride, then you can do all of the, really smart human advanced stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.